Yo, what is up guys, your boy IzuKage here with part 4 of What If Deku Was Trained by Yagami. So I want to address something real quick before we start. In the last part, people in the comments were wondering why didn't Deku just use his powers to escape the police. I mean, yeah, he could do that, but then he would become a wanted fugitive on the run. Plus that would make him look really suspicious. If he is innocent, then why run? Just, go wherever they're going and prove that you're innocent. So that's my thought process behind having him not doing anything. Anyways, let's get right into the what if. So we start this off in an interrogation room at the police station. Izuku has only been there for a minute or so when the door opened, and to his surprise it was his classmate, Shinso. Izuku was confused and said, Shinso, what are you doing here? And Shinso, he doesn't respond, he just glares at him and then goes to sit down. He opens up a file with some message transcripts on it, and it was the names of members of the LOV who died after only being in prison for 2 weeks. So Shinso asks Izuku, can you tell me your phone number? And trust me, lying won't help the situation. So a bead of sweat starts running down Izuku's forehead as he says it's 111. Just put in any random number, put in your number. Shinso then turns the image of the messages, the message transcripts around, and on the back side of the image it showed who sent the message and who received it. And the recipient's number matched up exactly with Izuku's number. And Shinso says, well, now tell me, how do you explain this? And Izuku was getting worried, but saw something behind Shinso, something coming through the wall, and it was light. So Izuku began to calm his nerves. He can't look foolish in front of his master. So Izuku says, well, a few weeks back I entered my number onto this sketchy website, so it may have used it for something malicious. And Shinso raised his eyebrow and asked, what website? Izuku starts thinking and said it was called All Hail Kira. And Shinso was now intrigued and says, oh, so you're a supporter of Kira's actions. And Izuku says, well, of course, I'm training to be a hero who takes down villains, but if you ask me, Kira is brave for taking down criminals for good, so they won't terrorize people ever again. And with that, Izuku started staring deep into Shinso's eyes and activating his ability Deep Stare, but a more advanced version. Instead of people seeing their worst nightmare and having feelings of fear, they would see something worth protecting and having feelings of sympathy. So Shinso's eyes begin to dilate, his pupils are getting bigger, and he just walks out. He goes to the other investigators and says, yeah, he's done nothing wrong. And the other investigators were confused, why he's letting him go, and one of them said, how could you? We have cold, hard evidence that that brat is Kira, so why let more people die? Shinso just walks over to the shredder and says, well, the evidence is wrong, and sends all the documents through the shredder. And the investigators they're all dumbfounded, like, is he dumb? Is this something they can't comprehend? What is happening? So they have to let Izuku go. So he goes, back to school, and it was like half an hour since he was taken away. So when he gets back there, they're basically just starting the 1v1 matches, and his match was first. So they were gonna make Mineta the winner by default, since Mineta is taking Shinso's place, and don't ask how he reached this far. Anyways, President Mike was going to call the match, but Izuku walked out of the hall, to the arena. And at this point, Mineta is shaking. He knows that his luck just ran out. So the crowd is growing even louder and louder, and then Midnight starts the match. As she does, in desperation, Mineta tries throwing ball after ball in hopes that it'll do something. And at this point he's bleeding everywhere because the more he pulls out the balls out of his hair, the more he starts bleeding. and you know he's bleeding way too much, like he's literally gonna die. So he has to stop, and he looks up, you know, wiping the blood off his forehead so he can see. But when he does, no one's there. Then he hears something from behind him. He hears someone say, "Looking for something?" And he turns around and sees Izuku right in front of his face. Izuku punches Mineta in the gut, knocking him out cold. And the crowd is cheering even louder. So, and you know, some of the heroes in the crowds were complimenting Izuku, like this like speed hero called Flash, not the actual Flash, he's like the off-brand version. And he says, "Wow, that kid is pretty fast, faster than me." And you know, I didn't even see him. And you know, some of the other people are like, yeah, stuff like that. So the matches goes on, nothing really changes, but let's switch perspective to someone watching the match on TV. A masked man staring in anger as Izuku took down all the opponents that stood against him. In rage, he got up and punched the TV screen, and he then turned to like a white-haired boy in the corner. Not really a boy, but you know, a white-haired guy in the corner. And he says, "So you're sure that's him?" And you know, the man nods, and he says, "So suit up, we have some business to go take care of. No one messes with my greatest creation and gets away with it." So back to Izuku. He's already beaten Todoroki and Ida. Now it's the finale, Bakugo versus Izuku. Midnight yells begin and Izuku rushes towards Bakugo, and without much time to think, he lets out an explosion all around him, and before the smoke even cleared, he got punched in the gut, sending him to the ground. Izuku jumped up into the air to like, you know, bring down like a ground pound like onto Bakugo, but he used his explosions to propel himself out of the attack, and Izuku punched the concrete, leaving a huge crack in the ground. And you know, seeing that, sweat ran down Bakugo's forehead like he just broke concrete. Imagine if that was my head. But Izuku kept pressing him, you know, keeping him on his toes, and the only way he could escape was using his explosions to maneuver around the stadium. But what he didn't know was Izuku was, you know, being strategic about it, and he cornered him inside the arena. And when it was too late, Bakugo realized that he was literally on the white line at the border, and Izuku was right in front of him. He tried using explosions to propel himself in the air, but Izuku flew up and punched him outside of the ring into like the walls that the stadium are at. So after that, Midnight announces that Izuku is the undisputed winner, and he, you know, wins the entire competition. So to the medal ceremony, you know, Bakugo, he's wheeled off to the emergency room, so he isn't there to take his medal. So third place, it's the usual tie between Todoroki and Tokoyami, but you know, Ida, he's, you know, has his brother to deal with, and Izuku gets his medal. And as All Might is handing him his medal, a portal appears in the middle of the arena, a sludge portal, you know, it's like mud, and All For One walks out. The entire stadium gasps because this is the #1 villain. And All Might goes on the offensive, and so does Izuku. But All For One says, Now, Toshinori, you probably don't want to attack me. Look at the screen over there." And you know, one of the big screens that would usually play clips of the, you know, the competition, so people in the stands could see better. It was a picture of Inko. You know, she was blindfolded and gagged and tied up. And Izuku was like, "What did you do with my mom?" And All For One says, "Don't worry about that, but what I want to know is what's your quirk?" And Izuku was confused, and his only concern right now was for his mother's safety. So Izuku, he didn't answer, and All For One said, "Alright kid, I'm done playing games. That quirk of yours is mine." And with that, All For One rushes Izuku, but you know, what's his name? All Might comes in between them and blocks, you know, the attack, the punch from All For One. And All Might is like, "Run!" So Izuku runs off, but before that, he turns on his Shinigami eyes to see the name of All For One. So he rushes into like the hallway leading to the arena, and he takes out his notebook. He summons it because that's one of his abilities, to just summon the notebook whenever he wants. So he summons the notebook and writes down the name he sees above All For One's head. And Izuku is waiting, and during this time, All For One All Might is trying to fend off All For One so he can't attack anyone else in the stadium, and some some heroes come down as well to try and assist. So 40 seconds pass, and they're in the middle of the fight, but All For One just drops, like he's dead, like he just had a heart attack. And Izuku was like, yes, finally. And he thinks he just killed All For One, but All For One was expecting this. And on the screen, the same screen that his mother was on, All For One appeared. And he says, "Oh, seems Tomura was right. You can just kill someone by just seeing them. I would love that quirk. So, keep it warm for me." And with that, the TV screen goes black. Izuku just knew he effed up big time. But he had no time to think about that. He has to go save his mom. And Izuku realized from the video, he guessed they were outside the city, maybe in the woods. He could hear cars, but they were far in the distance. So Izuku goes invisible and flies up above the city and starts scanning the area. 50 minutes go by and he sees an abandoned, sort of a wooden house in the woods, woods. And he flies down to the building and enters it. And when he enters, it's really quiet, a bit too quiet. And he floats above the floor because 1, it could be a trap, and 2, it looks run down and, ready to fall apart. He clears the ground floor but found nothing, so he moved up to the stairs. He gets to the 2nd floor and sees his mom chained to the wall, and Izuku becomes visible again and starts calling out her name. He's like, not her name, but he's like, "Mom, I'm here." And Inko had, for a second, she was excited to see her son, but it turned into a grimace, and she was trying to, nod her head, no, trying to tell Izuku not to come. But he was too into the moment, and from behind him, All For One came up with a wind-pressured punch right into Izuku's back. He got knocked over right in front of his mom, and All For One went for another, but Izuku went intangible this time. But the pain prevented him from going invisible, so he summoned his scythe and dodged another attempt as an attack from All For One. He went tangible and swung his scythe at his arm, and making it so sharp that it could cut his arm off. And All For One held down his screams of pain, his arm just got chopped off, but he just letting out grunts like, ugh. And he said, "You're gonna pay for that, Shigaraki, now." And Izuku looked and saw the same guy from the USG attack come out of the shadows and held his mom's neck with 4 fingers. And Izuku said, okay, don't hurt her. And All For One replied, "That's your choice. Just hand over your quirk and we'll let her go." Izuku put his hands up to show that he wasn't a threat, and he walked slowly towards All For One. All For One grabbed his head and a beam of light started coming off Izuku, but as soon as it appeared, it disappeared. All For One started to test if he got anything, but was confused because he didn't feel any different. And he said, "What's the meaning of this?" And Izuku's head was facing the floor when he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, it's not a quirk." And Izuku took out his scythe and cut a deep wound into All For One's stomach and kicked him back. He rushed Shigaraki, cutting his hand right off and kicking him into the wall, but as I said earlier, the building was crappy and basically about to fall apart. So he went through the walls like paper, and Izuku cuts his mom free. Once she's free, she hugs Izuku tightly, but from behind them, All For One comes up and he's already healed himself with a quirk. He went for another punch, combining multiple quirks, but Izuku, he made him and his mom go intangible. So the punch went right through them, and with that time he flew away, he escaped. But before he did, he got a good look at All For One with his Shinigami eyes to ensure his inevitable death. And that is where I'm going to be leaving this one off. Sorry guys for the short videos, but I don't know, I'm just not feeling this what if anymore. You guys really like it, but it's kind of hard sometimes, plus with school and all that stuff. Anyways, yeah, if you guys liked it, like. If you guys like my content in general, subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next What If.